Welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the TRI TK2. So first let me just put out a little disclaimer that I am not a huge DAC amp, bookshelf full of portable amps, desktop amps. I have a couple that I've been using religiously for a couple years, and so I don't have a ton of experience with bigger amps, but lots of experience with these two, and that's the Q Deluxe and that's the ES100. So the TK2 was actually my entry into a more powerful DAC amp than these two. These guys kind of max out at I think 300 milliwatts or so. This one's 1.25 watts. So I was looking for something with a bit more power, something that will drive harder to drive IEMs. So I really bought this not so much to review it in as much as this is going to be part of my daily driver routine, take over most of the work from those two guys. But I do tend to concentrate on portability over power or being wired to my desktop. I very much was interested in having a portable device with a whole lot of power. So that is the TK2 in a nutshell. So when it was first announced, I do work with Keep Hi-Fi, and I said, I definitely want to buy this unit. Can you get me a little discount? And so second disclaimer, they did give me a bit of a discount off of the $289 full price. So it was $259, then I had a little discount on that. So many thanks to them for giving me a little discount on it. But yeah, I actually bought this to be my unit, not so much for reviewing or anything else other than to be my daily driver, so to speak. So thank those guys. So before we jump into it, this is what it looks like up close. So you can see the inputs 2.5, 4.4, 3.5. This is actually the power light right there, and it's got a nice little mechanical click. This is a glass top, so that screen protector will probably stay there forever. These are your bitrate lights, and in the back there is a charging USB. This is the data USB. This is the line out, powered out. So if you want to run this as DAC mode only, you can do that as well. And unfortunately, the back is mirrored. So I'm not sure that was a great choice because it's going to get super scratched up. But again, there's a screen protector on the bottom, and that will probably stay there forever as well. So let's kind of jump into it. And I will say when this was first announced and I saw the announcement on HeadFi, the very first question or the first couple questions, someone asked, what's the sound signature on TK2? And Wendy Lee from KB Ear said neutral. So I do think, in a very tight nutshell, what does a TK2 sound like? They said it was going to be neutral, and they delivered a very neutral sounding DAC amp. That is as close to a perfect description as to what it sounds like. And I think people will try to elaborate on that, but at the end of the day, it's a very neutral sounding sound signature. So I would call it transparent. It's got this slight coolness to it, not analytical. It doesn't cross the line there, but yeah, it's got this little coolness to it, and that comes across as sharper details. But then it also has a very slight warmth to it to keep it musical. It's this, almost perfect balance that I was looking for. In addition to being, very neutral, I didn't want something that was too cool or something that was too warm, because then that kind of throws off the sound signature of your IEMs as well. So that's great for personal listening to it, but for reviewing, I wanted something more neutral, and this one pretty much rides that line right in the middle, where there's enough of each side to make it a very likable sound signature. So beyond that, very extended on both ends. I don't really notice, it clipping any sub bass or any treble. It definitely opens the stage over these two guys. You can sort of A/B them, and it definitely does open the stage a little bit more, and it definitely reveals a little more detail and clarity. Part of this coolness And I think people describe that as a neutral bright, but for me, it wasn't necessarily any brighter, but it's just more revealing, is how I would describe it. And that comes across in the detail and the clarity. And like I said, it's not for those seeking that warm analog sound. It's not a very, very warm, oozy, tubey sound. It's very much right in the middle of that neutral sound signature. So if that's what you're looking for, you're probably going to find it somewhere else. So additionally, what the guts of it, it is a dual ESS 903AQ2M. So very high quality DAC. It is paired with Texas Instruments op amps and headphone amps. And like I said, it actually does do a full 1.25 watts out, which is quite high. As I said, these guys are about 300 milliwatts. So this is about 4 times the amount of power that these guys do. So it does have this weird, that's not so typical Class AB then Class A workflow. So especially with IEMs, when you first turn it on, the first 60% of the volume range, you're going to be working in Class AB. And then as you pull over into 60%, and if you think about 60% on a pair of IEMs that are being powered at 1.25 watts, you're never going to get there at 60%. So for headphones, very much obvious that you're going to get 60%. You'll hear this little click at 60%. The volume drops a little bit, and then you're in Class A mode. For IEMs, you'll want to play with your source volume. So if this is paired to your phone and you really want to hear what Class A sounds like, lower the volume on your phone. That will lower your initial starting point on your headphones. And then you can turn it up to 60% and keep adjusting each one of them until you hit that. You'll hear it click a little bit, and then you can actually hear your IEMs at Class A as well. So same thing also on lower volume. So on very maybe easy to drive IEMs, you'll notice that you'll just click it on and that the initial starting volume may be a little loud. So adjust your source volume. If you want a more range in the lower volume, then tick your source volume down a little bit and you'll get more lower range volume on the TK2. So as I said, work your source volumes for either one of those cases if you want a more range in the lower or you want to hear what Class A sounds like. And I did it. There's not a drastic difference between A, B, and A mostly because this tends to rely heavily on A as opposed to AB. So even lower than 60%, you're still hearing most of what the Class A is going to sound like. So another unique thing, all the power at all the outputs. So on a device like this, the single-ended 3.5 is about half the power as the 2.5 balanced out. That is not the case on the TK2. We get all the power on all the outputs. So the 2.5 and the 4.4 and the 3.5 all at the same power output, which is great. So UAPP support for you guys on Android very much works out of the box. So you plug it in, UAPP will take command of the DAC, and you're off running, no issues, work perfectly fine from day one. Those of you on Windows 10, FooBar, they talk about using FooBar because FooBar supports DSD. If you just want to play Tidal or Spotify, we'll get to that in a second. It just basically works. If you need DSD support, you are going to be into installing some drivers and configuration, and we'll get to that a little bit shortly. So, first 5 bullets, I have no regrets on TK2. It is a wonderful device, and I will continue to use it because I love the sound of it and very much happy with this purchase. So point 6, again, this is almost nearly a $300 device, and I am going to nitpick it because there are some little things that they didn't quite explain right the first time and some other weirdness things. So I will call this the nitpicking line and do acknowledge that I am nitpicking these bits, but I am very much happy with this purchase and love the device, and I think everyone who reviews it is going to love the sound of it. I think that's going to be a universal thing, but still, it costs $300, and that gives me a right to nitpick some things. So let's start with the Quickstart. So here you go. So I took an image of the Quickstart from the manual, and they call it a Quickstart, but the Quickstart is essentially notes. So there is no Quickstart. It's just a list of issues and notes. So number one, like I was talking about, so Windows 10, Android, out of the box, you plug it in, it'll be recognized as a DAC device, and it'll probably work fine without a driver. Different Windows operating systems, or if you need DSD support, you are going to be in driver territory. So note one, so it is normal if there's heat during use of charging. I think that's kind of obvious. Most amps have that same problem. Not really a problem. They are dissipating heat. So yeah, so this product has a charging automatic stop function. So what that really means is on the back there is one green light. So this is actually a green light that I can't turn on right now. So when charging, it flashes to let you know that it's charging. When it is fully charged, it goes solid. So yeah, so that is what they mean by this automatic stop function. And that's the fully charged indicator light, which is the same light as the charging indicator. So one single light that's either flashing or solid. So this product can be used at the same time while charging. So again, it's got a charging line and a data line, and you can use them both simultaneously, which is pretty cool. So when playing part of the DSD file, the data transmission is unstable. If the data transmission is unstable or error occurred, there's a possibility of noise. So there's two issues here. So one, yes, if your CPU goes into processing something else and the stream becomes unstable, you may get some dropouts or some noise. That's true. So second, which they don't really mention here, is that with foobar, when you first start playing a DSD file, there's a good chance that you're going to hear noise. And it almost sounds like they are playing the buffer before the buffer is filled to me, because you get about 10 seconds of noise and it trails off as the buffer is read and filled. So, just an educated guess of what's going on, but it would have been nice if they explained that in more detail and how to get around it. So it says you can try pause and replay, which occasionally works as well, but the noise happens on foobar for me quite regularly, so I'm not sure if that's true. Or set it to PCM mode to play. The DSD indicator may be abnormal when playing DSD in DOP mode. So very true. And they touched on this in the FAQ, which we'll get into the next bit. So there are specific DSD bitrate lights on foobar. Those lights there's a very good chance they will not light up correctly, and I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so not necessarily abnormal, but you're not going to see any lights playing DSD in DOP mode, which is DSD over PCM mode, for those of you not familiar with that. So they pretty much tried out the Windows playback on foobar 2000, so that's very true. On Android, it's actually easier to work with because you'll get Hippie Music, HF Player. I use UAPP. They all take control of the DAC, and everything is pretty smooth. And the effect is better, as they say. So if you get irregular noises, and I actually do not get irregular noises from my cell phone, but I know I've actually had that happen, not on the TK2, but on other amps. So do turn that into flight mode if you do hear some background interference. Or charging, Type-C decoder has to be recognized as OTG, true. So lastly, the product is guaranteed for 1 year and paid for maintenance after 1 year. So do take that into consideration. So beyond the notes, this is the Quickstart, they actually TRI put out a FAQ, which talks a little bit more about some of the issues from the Quickstart. So if your PC or smartphone doesn't work when you first connect to it, read the user's guide, which is what I just read to you, and scan the QR, which is going to tell you to download some driver for DSD, so that's probably not going to do you any good. So what is the output impedance of the TK2? So 1 ohm. So for those of you who are into sort of these devices and their output impedance, which is about 0.2, so 1 ohm is about 5 times higher than these. What that translates into for you IEM folks is that black dark background. People look for very low output impedance because that keeps that noise floor very low. So I think if you're an IEM guy, you look at that and say that's on the higher side, it's higher than these. Is it the blackest of black backgrounds? I don't think so, but I wouldn't call it a noisy noise floor by any means either. I think as you're listening to tracks and they fade to silence, it's not like the black hole, a very black, pristine background that you get on either of these devices, but pretty close. So, but do be aware that that is one of those specs that they didn't quite publish everywhere, and then people asked about it. So it is 1 ohm for those of you who care about that. So why the DSD light doesn't show. So very early on, Intuit had a very early unit and said that his DSD lights do not show up. And again, it's these, you basically have a DSD light here for 64, 128, and both of them will light up for 256. So for those of you like me who like to get a new device and see the lights light up, this is slightly annoying because the lights do not light up. So what they're saying is if you are running DSD native mode, the light is on, and under foobar 2000, when you download the driver, it actually sets up for DSD, but it's really DSD over PCM mode. So they should have done a better job at explaining how to get the lights on. I couldn't actually get them on through foobar 2000. Even though you set it to DSD native, they tell you to set a DOP marker. I have a feeling that the marker, this is expecting a different marker than what they're telling you to set so the lights do not light up. I don't know. I'm not sure. I wish they had spent a little, again, this is one of these $300 nitpicks where I say they probably should have spent a day or two and sorted this out as opposed to this explanation which doesn't really explain it. So for those of you who aren't familiar with DSD and DSD over PCM, the real difference is packaging. So this unit supports DSD native. If you can get your source application to stream DSD native data straight to it, it can play it fine, no problems. For older players and for players that don't have that hardware, they use something called DSD over DOP. And that is simply breaking up the DSD stream into PCM packages and frames, and those are easier to assemble for different hardware. So what they're basically saying is that if you're going to default to DSD over DOP, don't expect these lights to work. Should they work? They do under Android. If you use UAPP and play the same exact DSD file that you tried to play under foobar, the lights will actually light up correctly. So yeah, so again, $300 nitpick. Therefore, do not worry, it is normal. So not quite so normal. You can certainly look at the HD Bravo control panel after you configure it and confirm that it is playing DSD 128, and I certainly did that. Foobar says it's playing DSD 128. So yeah, I do believe it is playing correctly in the correct format, but there is something about the marker that's not being set, that these lights are not reflecting what's actually being played, whereas they do on Android. So if you want to see the lights, then try it on Android. So under normal using situation, the battery life will be at least 1 year. So I don't know if that's just a strange translation. It doesn't inspire confidence. I hope it lasts, at least a year. I think that's a pessimistic view, but that is what they said. So if your battery has any problems within 1 year, contact them and they will change the battery for you. Again, $300 unit. I do hope that everyone's battery does last at least 1 year. So there are 2 appearance versions. This is the silver mirrored version, which is no longer available. There's a black matte one, which is less fingerprint prone, and that is the one that you can buy today. There'll be a leather case, and more questions, just ask them. So, cool. So that is more issues to take into consideration when you're dealing with this guy. So it does have a 5,000 milliamp battery. It can be charged using quick charge, but for the life of me, I cannot find a PD charger that works with it. So in general, the USB-C to C chargers do not seem to be recognized by my unit, and I know other people have said the same thing, that PD wasn't working. Even quick charging QC 3.0, that is quite selective. If you have an Anchor or something that had their own scheme for selecting quick charge or default charge, there may be a problem there, maybe not. I have one battery pack that works under quick charge and one that does not. But I think in general, the C to C stuff, I'm not sure that actually works at all. Whereas their USB-A to USB-C using quick charge works fine. But yeah, I'm just totally not convinced that despite what they say, I don't think it supports PD at all. So again, at $300 and $21, there's a couple of features that are probably missing. So not firmware upgradable as far as I know, or at least no one has said anything about it. No Bluetooth, no native MQA, which seemed to be very popular this year. Like I said, no power delivery, and there's no battery level, which is slightly annoying for those of you who like to figure out how much battery is left on your device. So lastly, and I will say that quality control and long-term support, they say they'll support it for a year, and then there's another year where you can pay for any repairs. But my unit did come with a loose volume knob, which to be absolutely fair with them, would have passed their quality control, because even on the first day it worked fine for me. On the second day, there's an inner knob and an outer knob, and the outer knob slipped away from the inner knob, and so I had a chat with them, and they kind of explained the situation and how to fix it. So not faulting them for that one, because it probably worked fine when they tested it. Worked fine for me on the first day. Second day, not so much. But other people, I know I've had a unit fail. I know I read yesterday that someone was having an issue with one channel not working. So I don't necessarily think that there's a QC problem, in as much as a new company coming out with a device for the first time, there's going to be a couple of hiccups, and maybe these are the hiccups that have been ironed out already. But it's a lot of money, and you should be aware that there are a couple nitpicking issues that have happened, just to my personal knowledge. And so that's about it. Like I said, very much love the unit and will continue to use it going into 2022. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.